They told me to bring fire, not faith. That was the first sentence spoken to me when I arrived at the southern gate of the Vatican just before midnight. A single lantern burned above the stone archway, its glow painting the marble in shades of amber and shadow. The man waiting for me did not offer a greeting. He pressed a wax-sealed envelope into my hand, nodded once, and guided me inside without a word. I had worked in countless archives and excavation sites, but nothing prepared me for the sensation of walking beneath these walls. The air itself seemed older, as if it had been exhaled by centuries of secrets. Every step echoed against stone that had absorbed prayers, lies, and bargains no scripture would ever admit. Inside the envelope was my directive, signed in the crimson ink of authority. I was to descend into a sealed reliquary beneath the Vatican and conduct the reductio ritual. My role was to ensure the fire consumed what remained, nothing more. No sketches, no records, no mention of what exactly awaited me. I told myself that was fine. I was a conservator, a restorer of fragile truths etched into bone and parchment. My entire profession demanded that I look, measure, and preserve. But tonight, I had been summoned to do the opposite. Tonight, they wanted me to destroy. The stairwell spiraled downward, lit by torches that hissed faintly in the damp air. Cardinal Darius led the way, his crimson robe sweeping the dust without gathering a speck. His presence was suffocating. His voice, when he finally spoke, was colder than the stone. "You are Damien Crosswell," he said without turning his head. "You were chosen because you see what others cannot. That gift is dangerous. Tonight it will be useful, but only if you obey." Behind us walked Father Malric, broad-shouldered, carrying a censer that leaked coils of incense. He glanced at me once, his expression flat, as if weighing whether I had the resolve to do what was coming. The air grew heavier as we reached the final landing. The door ahead was iron, bolted from both sides, its surface scarred with symbols I half recognized from archaic liturgies. Cardinal Darius pressed his palm to the lock, whispered a prayer that sounded more like a command, and the door groaned open. The reliquary was colder than the stairwell, yet the air shimmered faintly, as if heat lived in the stones themselves. My eyes adjusted, and then I saw it. A slab of ancient marble rose at the center of the chamber. Upon it lay a skeleton, its frame impossibly long, its bones stretched as though they once carried the weight of wings. Chains of blackened iron bound the figure at the wrists and ankles. The metal glistened with a strange, dull light, neither rust nor polish, but something otherworldly. The wings were real, or rather, what was left of them. Charred remnants clung to the shoulder blades, fragile as paper yet refusing to crumble. The bones were etched with cracks that glowed faintly under the candlelight, like veins of dying fire. I could not move. My breath lodged in my throat, caught between disbelief and terror. "This is why you are here," Cardinal Darius said. "An angel, bound long before your ancestors were born. You will ensure that it is reduced to ash. Fire alone can erase it from this world." Father Malric set down the censer and produced a bundle wrapped in crimson cloth. He unrolled it, revealing a wick soaked in holy oil, its end already primed for flame. He held it out to me. "Take it," he said, "and finish what was begun centuries ago." My fingers trembled as I reached for the wick, but when my skin brushed the bones, only for the briefest instant, the chamber shifted. It was not sound that struck me, not exactly. It was resonance, a vibration deep enough to rattle my teeth, yet soft enough to slip beneath the ribs of memory. To me it appeared as light, faint blue strands weaving through the cracks of the skeleton, forming shapes like forgotten letters. And then the whisper came, "Do not burn me." I jerked my hand back, heart hammering, eyes wide. The voice had not entered through my ears. It had bloomed inside my skull, smooth and steady, layered with a sorrow so profound it made my stomach twist. "Did you hear that?" I whispered before I realized I had spoken. Father Malric frowned. "Hear what?" Cardinal Darius studied me with cold eyes. "The remains are cursed. They will test your resolve. Do not listen. Do not falter." But I had listened, and the voice had not been a curse, it had been a plea. I stared at the bones again, at the blackened chains and the fractured wings. My training told me to measure, to document, to preserve the truth locked in matter. Fire would erase all of it. I could almost see the vibration forming into script along the ribs like a score of music carved in silence. My synesthesia caught every resonance as if the bones themselves were trying to sing. My hand closed around the wick, but I did not strike the flame. If this was sin, then so be it. I had not come to destroy. I had come to witness. And I would catalog even the voice of the fallen. I could not sleep after that night. Even when I left the reliquary and returned to my assigned chamber, the voice lingered in my head, soft and unyielding, repeating those same 3 words, "Do not burn me." By morning, my decision was clear. I needed to study the remains before fire reduced them to ash. I needed to prove, even if only to myself, that what I had heard was not madness but memory. The Vatican gave me a narrow cell as a workspace. Its walls were lined with shelves of brittle manuscripts, its table cluttered with instruments older than the city outside. Cardinal Darius granted me 1 day, no more, to perform my examination. He called it a mercy. Father Malric did not speak at all. His silence pressed heavier than the chains I had seen binding those bones. I unpacked my own tools, calipers, brushes, and a thin recording stylus designed to trace surface vibrations. My hands shook as I laid them out. This was not a manuscript, not a sarcophagus, not a relic carved by human hands. This was a skeleton that once carried breath and will, perhaps faith, perhaps rebellion. Sister Alara entered quietly, guided by the faint tap of her cane. Her sightless eyes seemed to fix directly on me, though I knew she could not see. She carried no instruments, only a small leather-bound hymnal worn smooth by her fingers. "They sent me to assist," she said. Her voice was steady, unafraid. "They think I can hear what others cannot." I almost laughed. "And what is that?" "The silence between the notes," she answered. We descended together, the same stairwell, the same torches flickering like watchful eyes. The reliquary greeted us with the same damp chill. The skeleton waited, unchanged, its wings scorched but unbroken, its chains humming faintly in my senses like the tail end of a struck bell. I set to work, brushing dust from the ribs, measuring the span of the arms. The calipers clicked softly, metal against bone. But when I struck the chain, just lightly with the stylus, everything changed. The vibration sang. It was not random. The pitch climbed and fell with deliberate order, notes bending into a melody older than language. My vision blurred. I saw streaks of blue and violet light curling through the chamber, painting the cracks in the marble floor with patterns I almost recognized. Sister Alara gasped. "I hear it." "You hear the song?" I asked. "Not the song," she whispered, "the space it leaves behind. The silence is shaped like prayer." The stylus continued its tracing, translating vibrations into ink across parchment. I watched lines emerge, not unlike musical notation, but far more intricate, as if the melody carried words embedded within. The bones themselves were writing, using me as their hand. The whisper stirred again. "This is not curse. This is testimony." My knees weakened. I gripped the table for balance, struggling to breathe. These were not hallucinations. The resonance was deliberate, purposeful. It was a message waiting to be read, a confession sealed in iron and bone. but Cardinal Darius was watching. His shadow stretched across the chamber, tall and severe. "You risk contamination, Crosswell," he said. "You are not here to interpret. You are here to end." Father Malric nodded grimly, as if eager for me to fail. I wanted to argue, to shout that what I was recording was history, not heresy, but Sister Alara spoke first. "If this is heresy," she said, "then it is sung with reverence. There is no malice in these tones, only grief." The Cardinal's expression hardened. "Grief is no absolution. Obedience is." He ordered us out, but I clutched the parchment before leaving. The ink was still wet, but the lines glowed faintly in the torchlight, as if the song had burned itself into the fibers. I hid it under my coat before anyone could stop me. That night, alone in my chamber, I unrolled the parchment and studied the lines by candlelight. They formed something like a hymn, but one I had never seen in any liturgical canon. The notes curved into spirals, looping back upon themselves like memory refusing erasure. When I traced the melody with my finger, the chamber itself seemed to listen. The flame bent, shadows leaned closer, and the whisper returned with words clear enough to chill my blood. I was bound for refusal. I was chained for silence. I was condemned because I would not erase what was holy. I dropped the parchment, my heart racing. If the voice spoke truth, then this was no fallen angel bound for rebellion. This was a witness punished for defiance. The next morning, Dr. Orfeo appeared at my door. He was not part of the reliquary guard. His robes were not crimson but gray, his eyes sharp with the hunger of a scholar who has lived too long in shadows. "I hear you have drawn something unusual," he said softly. "May I see it?" I hesitated. Showing him meant risking exposure. Hiding it meant betraying the truth. He smiled faintly at my silence. "You are not the first to hear the song," he said, "but you may be the first to record it. Do not waste that gift." He leaned closer, his whisper colder than the angel's had ever been. "There are some within these walls who would use those bones to forge weapons in the name of holiness. You must decide whether to feed the fire or fan it." When he left, I sat alone, parchment trembling in my hands. The song still echoed in my head, refusing to fade, and I knew then that the choice was no longer about obedience. It was about truth, truth that sang in chains, truth that would not burn quietly. The word haunted me, reductio. It appeared in the parchment margins of ancient decrees, whispered in corridors where even the crucifixes seemed to avert their eyes. It was more than ritual. It was policy, a method, a way to cut out the heart of a memory and replace it with silence. I had seen redaction before, of course, manuscripts with black lines slicing through inconvenient truths, chronicles altered to favor victors over victims. But this was different. This was fire sanctified as editing. Burn the evidence and history itself obeys. I traced the song again that night, humming the strange hymn under my breath. Each note pressed against my ribs as though the bones in my own chest wished to join the chorus. The whisper followed, steady and mournful. "Do you know why they fear me?" "No," I answered aloud, the chamber empty except for candlelight. "Because I refused the reductio, because I would not erase the holy with flame." The door creaked open. My heart slammed against my chest, but it was only Sister Alara. She stepped inside, her hymnal pressed tight against her chest. "You spoke again," she said softly. I did not ask how she knew. She could hear things none of us could, the silence between notes, the tremor in the stillness. "Alara," I said, "have you ever heard the word reductio?" She tilted her head, listening as if the stone walls might answer. "I've heard it in confessions, always whispered, always followed by ash." Her words chilled me more than any shadow. The next day, Cardinal Darius summoned me. His chamber was vast, lined with books chained to shelves, their locks gleaming under torchlight. He stood at the far end, his hands folded as though in prayer, but his eyes fixed on me with unblinking intensity. "You meddle, Crosswell," he said. "You were told to bring fire, not curiosity. Do you know what your curiosity threatens?" "I know what the bones are singing," I said before caution could silence me. "They are not cursed. They are not dangerous. They are testimony." His gaze hardened. "Testimony can be more dangerous than any curse." Father Malric emerged from the shadows, carrying a parchment older than my family line. He unrolled it across the table. Ink faded with age, but one word remained sharp, written in red pigment that looked too much like blood. Reductio. "This is the decree that bound the angel," Malric said. "It ordered his silence, his erasure. The chain was only a symbol. The fire is the command itself." "Why erase him?" I demanded. Darius leaned forward, his voice low. "Because doubt is a plague, Crosswell. Faith cannot survive the infection of dissent. He was not chained for falling. He was chained for refusing. He would not burn what we told him to burn. So now he must burn instead." The logic twisted my stomach. Erase the witness because the witness defied erasure, the perfect circle of cruelty. That evening, I returned to my chamber and found Dr. Orfeo waiting. He was seated at my desk, turning the parchment of the angel's song between his hands, as though it belonged to him. "You should lock your door," he said casually. I snatched the parchment back, but he smiled, unfazed. "Reductio is not destruction, Damien. It is substitution. They will not burn your angel and leave ashes. They will replace him, replace his silence with their own hymn, and no one will ever know the difference." His words slithered into me. "Replace him with what?" "With whatever serves them," Orfeo said. "A story, a symbol, a weapon. Imagine relics forged from bones that once defied obedience, holy weapons made from holy rebellion. You see now why fire is convenient. But what if, instead, those bones were studied, preserved, harnessed?" His eyes gleamed with hunger. "I can show you how." I felt sick. Behind him, Sister Ilara stood quietly in the doorway. Her face was pale, her lips pressed thin. She had heard every word. After Orfeo left, she placed a trembling hand on my arm. "Do not trust him. His hunger is worse than their fire. At least the fire is honest." That night, I dreamed of the skeleton. The wings stretched wider than the chamber, unburned, unchained. A choir rose from its chest, each voice carrying a fragment of truth the world had long forgotten. But then the flames came, bright and absolute, erasing the song until only silence remained. When I woke, the candle beside me had burned out, leaving nothing but smoke twisting in the air. The hour of reductio was approaching, and I knew I had only one choice: to obey and light the wick, or to defy and guard the testimony that sang from those bones. The reliquary had begun to feel like a living thing. Every time I stepped inside, the air seemed thicker, more aware, as though the stone itself listened. The angel's bones lay motionless on the slab, yet I could not shake the sense that they were watching me in return. I had one purpose left before the hour of fire arrived. I had to find the truth, not whispers, not rumors, not Orfeo's temptations or Darius's commands. The truth. Sister Lara met me at the threshold. Her hymnal rested in her hands, but she did not open it. She tilted her head, listening to something only she could hear. "You feel it too," she said. "The air?" I asked. "The silence," she answered. "It has changed. Something waits for you." I moved closer to the slab. The black chain seemed restless under the torchlight, vibrating faintly, releasing notes so low they felt more like pressure than sound. I lifted my stylus and tapped the surface of the marble beneath the skeleton. The resonance spread outward in a perfect circle, revealing something I had not seen before. A panel in the floor shifted under my weight. Dust rose in a cloud. I knelt, pressing my palms to the stone, and felt grooves cut deep into its surface. With Alara's help, I brushed the dust away until the markings emerged. They were not runes, they were words. I traced them slowly, each letter carved with deliberate force. The language was Latin, but older, raw, closer to the tongue of Rome's infancy. I whispered the translation as it formed beneath my fingers. He refused to burn the innocent. He refused to silence their hymn. He is guilty of disobedience. He is guilty of memory. His punishment is silence eternal. My chest tightened. The indictment was not for corruption, not for betrayal, not for rebellion against heaven. He was condemned because he would not obey the order to erase a people, their songs, their very existence. He was not bound for falling, I murmured. He was bound for remembering. The whisper stirred, as if the words carved into stone had freed it from centuries of weight. I would not erase them, the voice said, so they sought to erase me. Sister Alara's hands trembled on her cane. I hear the grief. It is vast. It is not lies. Footsteps echoed down the stairwell. I rolled the panel shut just as Cardinal Darius entered, flanked by Father Malric. His gaze swept the chamber, sharp enough to strip stone. "You should not be here unsupervised," Darius said. "The hour draws near. The fire must be readied." My mouth went dry, but I spoke anyway. "I know why he was chained." Darius's expression did not change, but Malric stiffened. "You knew all along," I continued. "This was not about sin. It was about obedience. He refused to carry out reductio. He would not burn what you ordered him to burn. That is his crime." For a moment, silence stretched taut between us. Then Darius exhaled, almost in pity. "You see too much, Crosswell. That is both your gift and your danger." "Yes," he refused. "And that refusal threatened more than you can imagine. Faith is not sustained by questions. It is sustained by obedience. Without obedience, the structure crumbles." "Eliminating truth does not preserve faith," I said. "It hollows it." Malric stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Enough. The command stands. You will burn the remains tonight." Darius raised a hand, halting him. "No. Let him wrestle with what he has learned. Sometimes knowledge is its own burden. By the time the flames are lit, he will understand." They left without another word, their footsteps fading into the stairwell. I sagged against the slab, my pulse racing. The indictment glared up at me from beneath the dust, as if daring me to ignore it. "Alara," I said, my voice shaking, "if this is true, then burning him is not just erasing a body, it is erasing defiance itself. It is erasing proof that obedience is not the only path." She bowed her head. "Perhaps that is why they fear him. Not because he fell, but because he stood." I looked again at the bones. The cracks along the ribs glowed faintly, forming patterns that seemed almost like words in light. My synesthesia twisted the resonance into shapes that matched the carved indictment. It was as though the skeleton itself echoed the inscription, refusing to stay silent even after centuries. I pressed my palm to the bone, steadying my breath. "Tell me," I whispered, "what did you save from the fire? Whose hymn did you refuse to burn?" The whisper answered, faint and trembling. "They sang of dawn. They sang of a light that belonged to no throne. They sang of freedom." I could not silence them. The chamber shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling as if the very reliquary trembled at the memory. I staggered back, clutching my chest, the voice still vibrating through my bones. The truth was no longer buried. It was alive, burning louder than any flame they could summon, and I knew then that if I obeyed, if I lit the wick and carried out reductio, I would not only destroy an angel, I would destroy the last evidence that disobedience could be holy. The hour of fire had been set. Midnight. The reliquary would be sealed, the torches lowered, the wick lit, and history reduced to smoke. Cardinal Darius made the announcement in the council chamber that afternoon. His voice carried the weight of inevitability, the kind of tone that made obedience sound holy and doubt feel like treason. I sat in silence as he spoke, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles blanched. Father Malric stood beside him like a stone sentinel, his gaze fixed on me, with the quiet certainty of a man who had already judged. "Tonight the redactio will be completed," Darius declared. "The remains will be consigned to ash, and the record of disobedience will end. This is the will of the Church. This is the will of heaven." When he dismissed the council, I lingered in the chamber, staring at the floor as if the stones themselves might offer guidance. But when I looked up, Dr. Orfeo was waiting in the shadows, his gray robes whispering against the marble as he approached. "You know what they are asking you to do," he said. His smile was thin, brittle, hungry. "Erase the one voice that dared to refuse them. Do you not see the irony?" "I see it," I muttered. "But I also see the danger. If I defy them openly, they will burn me along with the bones." Orfeo leaned closer. "There are other paths. Fire is only one way to edit. Substitution is another. What if we created the illusion of destruction while keeping the truth intact? The chains sing, Crosswell. The bones sing. With time, I could teach you how to make them sing louder, strong enough to shake this city to its core." I recoiled from the gleam in his eyes. "You want a weapon." "I want preservation," he insisted. "Preservation with purpose. Tell me, is that so different from your own desire?" Before I could answer, Sister Alara stepped into the chamber. Her cane tapped lightly against the stones, her face pale but resolute. "Do not listen to him," she said. "He does not seek preservation. He seeks power. The song is not a weapon, it is memory. To twist it would be another kind of erasure." Orfeo's lips curled. "And what would you have him do, sister? Burn the memory to please a tyrant in red robes? Ash tells no truth, at least I offer continuity." The tension between them pressed against me like a vice. I wanted to scream, to beg them both for silence so I could hear my own thoughts. Instead, I closed my eyes and listened. The reliquary hummed faintly beneath my feet. The whisper stirred. "The fire will erase me. His hunger will consume me. Only your hands can hold me." I opened my eyes and found both Orfeo and Alara watching me. My chest tightened. "I cannot burn him," I said, the words trembling from my throat before I could stop them. "Not when I know the truth." Alara's face softened, relief washing over her features, but Orfeo's smile widened like a blade unsheathed. "Good," he said. "Then we plan. Tonight when they demand fire, we will give them spectacle, the smoke they crave. But the bones we will hide." I shook my head. "Not we, me. This is my choice, my burden. If I let you touch them, Orfeo, you will twist them into something unrecognizable. I cannot allow that." His expression darkened, but before he could argue, Cardinal Darius returned. His presence silenced the chamber. "It is time," he said simply. We descended into the reliquary once more. The skeleton waited, bound and silent, though my senses thrummed with its resonance. The cracks along its ribs glowed faintly, like embers refusing to die. Father Malric placed the wick in my hand. The oil clung slick and heavy, its scent sharp with sanctity. He met my gaze with iron certainty. "Do what must be done," he said. I stepped toward the slab, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. The council watched from the shadows. Darius's gaze bored into me like a brand. Orfeo lingered just beyond, eyes glittering with anticipation. Alara stood at the far end, her lips moving in silent prayer. The whisper coiled inside me, a thread of sound woven into my bones. "Choose, Damien, ash or memory, silence or song." I lifted the wick. The flame of the nearest torch bent toward it, eager, greedy. My hand trembled, my breath caught. Images flashed before me, the indictment carved in stone, the melody etched in cracks of light, the sorrow of a being who had chosen memory over obedience. And then another image, smoke filling the chamber. The record lost forever, history rewritten into silence. I could not let that happen. I lowered the wick, but not to the bones. Instead, I brushed it against the parchment I had copied the song onto. The oil caught, flame racing across the page. Smoke curled upward, thick and pungent, filling the chamber with the scent of sacrifice. Gasps echoed from the shadows. Darius leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Malric's lips parted in approval. They believed I had begun. But beneath the smoke, the bones still lay untouched. I turned my face toward the council, hiding the trembling in my hands. "It is done," I said, the reliquary filled with smoke. Cloaking the slab from sight, I prayed the illusion would hold, that the fire would buy me time. But as the flames devoured the parchment, the whisper pulsed within me, stronger than ever. "You have chosen. Now you must bear the cost." The smoke still lingered in the reliquary long after the parchment had burned. It curled against the ceiling like restless spirits, veiling the slab and the chained skeleton from the council's view. Cardinal Darius was satisfied enough to leave, Father Malric following close behind. Only Dr. Orfeo lingered for a moment, his eyes sharp, suspicious, before he too vanished up the stairwell. When the chamber finally emptied, I was left with Sister Alara. She stood near the far wall, her cane tapping softly against stone, as if she were tracing the edges of the silence itself. Her blind eyes tilted toward me. "You deceived them," she said. "Yes," I admitted. "I had no choice. The bones are still here. The truth is still here." She stepped closer, her voice hushed. "Then we must be quick. Truth will not remain hidden for long." I approached the slab again. The skeleton lay motionless, its fractured ribs glowing faintly with threads of light. The chains hummed in the edge of my senses, vibrating like strings waiting for a bow. My tools lay on the table beside it, the stylus, the brushes, the parchment. I picked up the stylus and tapped gently along one of the blackened chains. The resonance spread through the reliquary like ripples in still water. Colors flickered across my vision, blue, violet, streaks of gold, until they wove together into a pattern I recognized. A score, a hidden melody written into the very cracks of bone and iron. Alara gasped softly. "It is beginning." I traced the pattern with the stylus, moving from rib to rib, chain to chain. Each strike released another note, another thread of resonance that joined the last. The chamber filled with vibration, subtle at first, then rising until the air itself quivered. And then I heard it. Voices, not one, not two, but dozens layered together in harmony. A choir without bodies, rising from the marrow of ancient bones. The sound was vast yet intimate, as if the walls themselves had learned to sing. Alara clutched her hymnal to her chest. Tears streaked her cheeks. "I hear them," she whispered. "I hear the choir." The song was unlike any hymn I had ever known. It did not praise thrones or kingdoms. It did not beg for mercy. It told of light rising in the east, of a dawn that belonged to no master, of voices refusing to be silenced. The melody swelled, filling every crevice of the reliquary, until even the stones seemed to tremble in reverence. The whisper joined them, not as a single voice, but as the thread that bound them together. "This is what they tried to erase. This is why I would not burn." Alara's knees buckled, and I caught her before she fell. She pressed her forehead against my shoulder, sobbing with awe. "It is not blasphemy," she said. "It is prayer. It is the first prayer." The air shimmered with light no torch could produce. Patterns of glowing script danced along the walls, curling like vines, disappearing before my eyes could fully grasp them. I realized with a chill that the reliquary itself was a vessel, a chamber designed not to hold the angel, but to contain his song. I looked at Alara. If they hear this, if they know it still exists, they will tear this chamber apart stone by stone to silence it. She nodded weakly. Then you must carry it, memorize it, let it live in you before they can destroy it. I closed my eyes and let the melody flood me. Each note carved itself into my memory, each harmony etched into the marrow of my bones. It was overwhelming, painful even, as though my body was too fragile to hold the weight of something so vast. But I endured. The song ended not with triumph, but with silence, a silence so complete it felt sacred. Alara and I stood in the stillness, trembling, our hearts beating in rhythm with what remained. When the last echo faded, the chamber seemed smaller, dimmer. The glow along the bones subsided, the cracks returning to faint embers. The chains were still. The reliquary was quiet. Alara lifted her face toward me. You carry it now. I swallowed hard, my chest heavy with the echo of voices that would never be heard again. Yes, I carry it. The whisper stirred once more, faint but certain. Guard it well. They will come for it. They will come for you. I pressed my hand against the cold bone, a vow forming in the silence. I would not let the song die, not by fire, not by hunger, not by obedience. But as we ascended the stairwell, I could already hear footsteps echoing above us, heavy, purposeful, too many to belong to chance. The council had begun to doubt, and the night was far from over. The chamber smelled of wax and dust. High above, frescoes of saints crumbled into shadow, their painted eyes gone, leaving only blank sockets staring down at us. A circle of candles burned around the council table where 5 figures waited. Cardinal Darius presided, his crimson robes like a wound in the dim light. Father Melrick stood stiff beside him, arms folded, the shape of judgment itself. Dr. Orfeo leaned back in his chair, gray sleeves draped like smoke, his eyes gleaming with expectation. Sister Alara sat quietly at the far end, hymnal closed, her sightless gaze lifted as if she could hear voices in the rafters. And at the center, the empty chair was mine. Darius gestured. Sit, Damien, it is time. I lowered myself into the chair. The table was bare except for a bowl filled with stones, black for destruction, white for preservation, red for repurposing. Darius spoke in the voice of verdict. The reliquary remains unpurged. You hesitated. Now the council must decide. Burn, preserve, or repurpose. Orfeo rose first. I speak for repurposing. The bones sing. That song can be forged into relics, into weapons sanctified by faith. Why waste such power in smoke? Malric scowled. Weaponry is blasphemy. Doubt is a poison. The bones are dangerous. Only fire can cleanse. He slammed a black stone onto the table. Ash leaves no heresy. Alara's turn came. She stood, hands trembling on her cane. I heard the choir. It was not rebellion. It was prayer. To burn it would be to burn the memory of those who loved the light freely. I say preserve. She placed the white stone gently in the bowl. Now all eyes turned to me. My pulse thundered in my throat. I touched those bones, I said. I heard their testimony. He was chained because he refused to erase the innocent. That is not sin. That is courage. To burn him is to finish the crime. To repurpose him is to twist his voice into a weapon. I vote for preservation. I dropped the white stone into the bowl. It clinked softly, fragile against the others. Last was Darius. He walked to the bowl, his face unreadable, and released his stone. The sound was muffled, impossible to judge. When the tally was revealed, my stomach tightened. Red, black, white, white, and the last stone, black. 2 for destruction, 2 for preservation, 1 for repurposing. Darius folded his hands. The council is divided. Yet destruction and repurposing outweigh preservation. The remains shall burn. Alara gasped. Orfeo's mouth curled into a smile. Malaric's eyes burned with grim triumph. I rose, fury shaking through me. You cannot twist the vote like that. Repurposing is not destruction. It is another kind of preservation. Darius's voice cut like a blade. The decision is final. The angel will burn tonight. The candles shuddered. The chambers seemed to shrink around me, and in the hollow of my bones the whisper stirred, urgent. They will burn me. If you would save the truth, you must act now. Alara bowed her head in silence, but I saw the faintest nod, a pledge. The vote had been cast, the fire was coming, and I knew I had only hours left to find a way to defy them all. The council adjourned, their verdict hanging like smoke in my lungs. Destruction had won, or so Darius declared. Midnight had been set again as the hour of fire. I returned to my chamber, but I could not sit. My mind spun with fragments of song, the indictment carved into stone, and the voices of the choir still echoing in my bones. The whisper pulsed within me, faint but insistent. They will burn me. If you would save the truth, you must act before the flames touch bone. I paced the room until my steps traced a path in the dust. To fight openly was suicide. To plead again was useless. That left deception. If redactio was a ritual of substitution, destroy one thing so that silence could be written in its place, then I would turn the ritual back on itself. I would give them ashes, but not his. The reliquary was guarded, but not heavily. Darius trusted in obedience more than soldiers. 2 men watched the stairwell, both weary and inattentive. I waited until the bells marked the evening hour, then carried a stack of old manuscripts down the corridor, their spines cracking, their pages brittle. The guards hardly glanced at me. A conservator carrying parchment was no threat. Inside the reliquary, the air was colder than before. The skeleton rested in silence, its chains dull under the torchlight. I set the manuscripts on the floor and opened them, brittle pages crumbling at my touch. Each one contained hymns, decrees, or confessions long forgotten, records already abandoned by time. Their ashes would satisfy the council. If only I could mask the difference. Sister Alara appeared at the door, her cane tapping softly. She had followed without being summoned. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You mean to trick them? Yes, I said. I will burn these texts. Their smoke will fill the chamber. The bones will remain hidden. Her sightless eyes turned toward the slab. And where will you hide him? You cannot carry an angel on your shoulders. I swallowed hard. She was right. The bones were too large, too heavy. But I'd studied the reliquary long enough to know its secrets. Beneath the slab, the carved indictment had revealed a panel. With effort, I shifted the stone, exposing a cavity dark and deep. It was meant to conceal, I said. It will serve again. Together we worked, Alara guiding her hands along the edges while I lifted the skeleton piece by piece. The bones were cold, but the moment I touched them, the resonance surged, filling my senses with trembling light. The whisper stirred, almost hesitant. You risk everything. I know, I murmured, but better risk than silence. We lowered the bones into the cavity. The chains followed, their metal clinking like muted bells. When the last wing fragment had been hidden, I slid the panel shut and brushed the dust across it until it looked untouched. The reliquary was whole again, its secret buried beneath. Now came the deception. I stacked the manuscripts upon the slab, layering them as though they were offerings. Their pages rustled like dry leaves. I poured the remaining oil from the sacred wick across them. The smell was sharp, sanctified, masking the ordinary nature of the parchment. Alara placed her hand on mine. They will not believe forever, but it may be enough. The bells tolled above. Midnight was near. The council returned in procession, robes whispering, candles flaring. Darius led them, his expression carved in stone. Malric carried the wick, its end glowing faintly with prepared flame. Orfeo lingered behind, his gaze sharp, searching. They gathered around the slab. Darius extended his hand. "Do it, Damien. End this." I took the wick. My hand trembled, but I lowered it to the manuscripts. Oil caught instantly, flame leaping, racing across the brittle pages. Smoke rose thick and acrid, filling the chamber, twisting in the torchlight. Gasps rippled through the council. Malric nodded in grim satisfaction. Darius closed his eyes, whispering a prayer of finality. Orfeo, though, leaned forward, his nostrils flaring. Suspicion etched across his face. "The smell," he murmured. "It is not bone." My pulse surged. The smoke thickened, choking the chamber, blinding the eye. I stepped back, holding the wick like a shield. "Ash is ash," I said. "The silence you demanded has been given." For a moment, no one moved. The flames devoured the manuscripts, collapsing them into glowing embers. Ash spilled across the slab, coating the marble in black dust. To any eye dulled by smoke and certainty, it looked enough. Darius opened his eyes and nodded. "It's finished." The council turned to leave, satisfied with the illusion. But Orfeo lingered, his gaze fixed on me through the haze. His lips curled into a knowing smile. "Perhaps," he said softly, "but silence is never complete." When they were gone, Alara and I remained in the chamber. The smoke drifted upward, leaving behind nothing but ash and the faint glow of embers. Beneath the slab, untouched, the angel's bones waited in secret. The whisper stirred once more, steady now, almost grateful. "You have saved me for tonight, but they will search again, and when they do, the fire will not be so easily fooled." I brushed the ash from my hands, my heart still racing. The deception had worked, for now. But I knew Orfeo's suspicion would not rest. The reliquary was safe tonight. Tomorrow might be another story. The reliquary was silent again, though the smoke of deception still clung to the air. Ash lay scattered across the slab like the remnants of a false funeral. Beneath the stone, hidden from every eye but mine, the angel's bones waited. Sister Alara sat against the wall, her hands clasped around her hymnal. She looked fragile, as if the weight of the choir she had heard still pressed upon her. "They believe it is done," she said. "For now," I answered. "But Orfeo does not. He suspects." I brushed the ash from my hands and unrolled the parchment where I had traced the vibrations days before. The inked lines glowed faintly under the torchlight. As if the melody itself refused to fade, patterns curled into spirals, notes looping into themselves like memories unwilling to die. Alara tilted her head. "You carry the hymn in your bones. I can hear it in your breath." I closed my eyes. She was right. Since the night the choir rose, the melody had lived inside me. Every note lingered, pressing against my ribs, etched into marrow. When I hummed softly, the reliquary seemed to respond, the torches swaying as though moved by an unseen wind. The whisper stirred. "Sing it whole. Give voice to what they buried." My throat tightened. "I do not know if I can." Alara reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold but steady. "Then I will listen. Together, perhaps we will find the missing notes." I laid the parchment across the slab. My stylus traced the lines while my voice followed, low at first, uncertain. Each note echoed in the chamber, trembling against the stone. At times I faltered, the melody twisting into shapes I did not understand, but Alara lifted her head, correcting me. She did not hear sound the way I did. She heard silence, the shape of space between. Her corrections pulled the fragments together, binding them into a whole. And then it happened. The hymn emerged. It was not grand like the choirs of cathedrals. It was simple, ancient, unadorned. A rising phrase like dawn breaking across mountains, a descent as gentle as evening rain. No words, only tone, yet it carried meaning deeper than language. It spoke of light that belonged to no throne, of breath given freely, of voices unchained. The chamber trembled. Torches flared, shadows stretched. Along the walls, the faint script I had glimpsed before returned, glowing in curves of gold and blue. The reliquary became an instrument, its stones vibrating with resonance. Alara pressed her palms together, tears slipping down her face. "It is the first hymn," she whispered, "the one before liturgy, before canon, before obedience." I sang louder, the melody flowing through me as if it had waited centuries for my breath. My chest ached, my vision blurred with light. The hymn poured from me, not mine yet inseparable from me. And for a moment, the reliquary was filled with presence, not a body, not a figure, but a weight of truth pressing against every surface, every soul. It was not the angel reborn, but his defiance made audible. The whisper joined, not in words, but in harmony. The resonance shook the slab, rattled the chains buried beneath it. You have restored what they feared most. A song that cannot be owned. A light that cannot be caged. I nearly collapsed when the last note faded. Silence returned, heavy but sacred. The torches steadied. The script along the walls dimmed until only stone remained. Alara's hand found mine again. Her grip was weak, trembling. "Do you understand what you've done?" I nodded, though my chest still burned. I gave voice to memory. Now it lives again. Her blind eyes glistened, and now it must be protected. They will sense it. They will know. As if to prove her right, footsteps echoed down the stairwell, heavy, urgent. Dr. Orfeo entered, his gray robe stirring the ash on the slab. His gaze swept the chamber, then fixed on me, sharp as a blade. "You sang," he said. His smile was thin, dangerous. "I heard it in the corridors. The walls themselves carried it. So the first hymn survives after all." I straightened, refusing to show fear. "It is not yours to use." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Everything that exists can be used, Damien. You think preservation is noble, but it is only a tool waiting for hands strong enough to wield it. With the hymn, we could forge relics that bind armies, that silence doubt, that shape the future itself." Alara clutched her hymnal to her chest. "You would twist it into another chain. That is not preservation. That is another reductio." Orfeo ignored her, his gaze locked on me. "The council will burn you if they learn what you have done, but I can protect you. Share the hymn with me, and together we can ensure it is never lost again." The whisper stirred in warning, cold against my bones. "Choose carefully. His hunger is fire in disguise." My heart pounded. I had restored the hymn. I had carried voices silenced for centuries, and now already others sought to own it, to twist it, to burn it anew. I tightened my grip on the parchment. "This song will not be yours, Orfeo. It belongs to no one. That is why they tried to erase it. That is why I must guard it." Orfeo's smile faded. In its place came something sharper, a predator's patience. "Guard it then. But know this, secrets rot. When they drag you before the flames again, you will wish you had chosen differently." He turned and left, his footsteps echoing like threats in the dark. Alara sank to her knees, whispering the melody under her breath, as if repeating it would keep it alive. I pressed my palm against the slab, against the hidden bones below. "I will not let them burn you," I whispered. "Not you, not the hymn. Not again." The reliquary was quiet, but inside me the song still burned, a flame no fire could extinguish. The bells of midnight tolled across the Vatican, each strike a nail hammered into inevitability. The sound seeped through the stones, rolling down into the reliquary where I waited with Sister Alara. Beneath the slab, the angel's bones lay hidden. In my chest, the first hymn still burned. The council returned in procession. Cardinal Darius at the front, robes a crimson river. Father Malric close behind, carrying the wick already anointed with oil. Dr. Orfeo walked slower, eyes fixed on me with quiet hunger. They filled the chamber with presence, suffocating and absolute. "This ends tonight," Darius declared. "No more hesitation, no more deceit. The reliquary must be cleansed." I stood before the slab, ash from the burned manuscript still scattered across its surface. My hands trembled, but not with fear, with fury. "You ask me to erase truth," I said, "to finish a crime begun centuries ago, but I will not." Malric stepped forward, jaw tight. "You will, or you will burn with him." Alara lifted her chin, her blind eyes steady. "He speaks for the song, and the song is not blasphemy, it is prayer. You fear it because it proves obedience is not the only path." Orfeo smiled faintly. "Perhaps fear, perhaps opportunity. The hymn has been restored. You all felt it, did you not? Even these walls still hum with it." He spread his arms. "Why destroy what could be wielded? Give it to me. I will bind it, forge it, preserve it in a form the world cannot ignore." Darius's voice cut through his words. "No, the choice is not yours, Orfeo. It is the council's, and the council has chosen." His gaze locked on me. "Damien, take the wick." The torchlight flickered against the oil-soaked cord. My throat was dry, my pulse racing, and the whisper stirred inside me, no longer mournful, but resolute. "This is your testimony, not mine. Yours." I took the wick. For a moment, the council seemed to relax, certain they had won. But I did not lower it to the slab. Instead, I raised it high, the flame illuminating the chamber, and I spoke. "I have heard the first hymn. I have sung it, and I will not destroy it. The angel was bound for refusing to erase the innocent. If I burn him now, I chain myself to the same lie. But if I speak, if I preserve, then truth survives, even if you kill me." The chamber erupted. Malric lunged toward me, but Alara stepped into his path, frail yet unyielding. Orfeo's eyes lit with triumph at the chaos, his lips forming words I could not hear. Darius raised his hand, commanding silence, but the hymn in my chest refused to obey. I sang. The first notes trembled from my throat, uncertain but growing. The reliquary shook. The chains buried beneath the slab rattled like distant thunder. Light seeped from the cracks in the stone, curling upward in ribbons of gold and blue. Alara joined me, her voice soft yet sure, harmonizing with the silence she alone could hear. The chamber filled with sound, not the echo of rebellion, not the roar of defiance, but the simple, sacred prayer of freedom. Darius staggered back, his face pale. Malric shouted, reaching for the wick, but it burned in my grasp like a star. Orfeo stood frozen, torn between awe and greed. The hymn rose higher, pressing against the ceiling, spilling through the stairwell. I imagined it reaching the streets above, the domes, the bells, seeping into every corner of the city. Then came the crack. The slab split down the center, dust billowing, and for an instant I saw them, the bones, radiant, unbound, wings stretching wide in light. Not flesh, not resurrection, but memory made visible. The testimony of defiance. The council shielded their eyes. Alara fell to her knees, tears streaming. The whisper filled me one last time. "You have carried me. Now I carry you." The light consumed the reliquary. Torches sputtered, candles guttered. Smoke and brilliance tangled until I could no longer tell one from the other. When it cleared, the slab was whole again, sealed. The chains lay cold, silent. The glow was gone. The council stared at me. Darius's face was carved from fury and fear. Maloric's fists trembled. Orpheo's eyes still gleamed, but with something darker now, patient hunger. "You will answer for this," Darius said. "Perhaps," I replied, my voice hoarse, "but the hymn lives now, not in stone, not in chains, in us and me." Alara whispered beside me, finishing the final note. The chamber trembled once more, faint but undeniable. The council withdrew in silence, their verdict fractured, their authority shaken. Orfeo lingered at the door, smiling faintly. "You cannot guard it forever, Damien. Secrets burn brighter the longer they are hidden." And then he was gone. I stood in the reliquary, ash still clinging to my hands, the echo of the hymn lingering in my chest. Had I preserved truth, or only delayed its destruction? The answer lay in silence, a silence that was no longer empty, but full. The story was not finished.